Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second day of Pros and Content. I'm so happy to be back here on the main stage with an incredible CMO and partner, Vineet. Hi, how are you?
And great to be here.
Coming in from Chicago, right?
Yep, live from Chicago.
I can see that we're both at standing desks. I think we're trying to be all healthy in the middle of all of this.
Absolutely. Got to be moving, got to be standing. Too much sitting going on these days. So,
No, I know. So, Vineet, you are the Global Chief Marketing Officer of the Walgreens Boots Alliance, which is a huge role. But I think the most impressive thing about you is the fact that you've actually been in so many different industries. And I remember when we first met at CES this year, which is so crazy that we were both at CES this year, you were throwing all these questions at me that were so tech savvy. And I was like, wow, this guy knows a thing or two about technology. So I started looking into your background and I realized you've worked in technology, you've worked in beauty, you've worked in CPG, you've worked in pharma, like all these different industries. So I just wanted you to share a little bit with us, like, why did you decide to go into marketing to begin with? And then how did you decide to make these transitions throughout your career? I'm sure the audience would love to hear.
yeah, so thanks for having me again and happy to share a little bit about that. So marketing for me, I mean, we all kind of grow up and end up with certain mentors and people that sort of shape our lives. And I'll never forget, marketing for me is actually an accidental choice. You know, I'm a first generation immigrant kid, and many of your viewers or listeners will know this story if they're in the boat that both you and I are in, which is, you know, first generation immigrant kid, become an engineer, become a doctor, get a profession that, you know, has a lot of degrees and do that in one way. You know, for me, you know, that was always a goal. I thought I was just going to follow that trodden path. And then when I was in grade 11, I'm going back in the day here, blue collar town in Canada called Oshawa. I met a high school teacher who actually ran a marketing class. And he was actually an ex Procter and Gamble brand manager who decided to switch careers and become a teacher. And so he, out of his own volition, created a marketing class in our high school that I happened to go at. And, you know, he just, I just learned a lot from him. And I thought he was almost like an idol. And I just thought he was like the coolest guy I'd ever met. And from there, you know, honestly, he funded my first startup. He gave me $4, said, go and open a school store. By the end of the year, we had like Coca-Cola coolers and Pepsi distribution. And, you know, we had literally created a profit center for the school off of a $50 seed fund from my marketing teacher. And it's people like that you meet in your life that I think really propel you forward. And, you know, hopefully, I know you pay it forward. I try to do the same, but it was that moment that I think changed my trajectory. I dropped my physics class and started taking business classes and paved the way from there.
It's incredible what these mentors add to our lives and how they really represent these turning points for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a bit about, I'm curious in particular about your tech experience. So where were you at before you jumped into tech? I think it was a institute, like a big corporation, and then you decided to take over as CMO of this fast growing company that was owned by a private equity firm, which comes with its joys.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from you. How was that experience as a CMO?
Well, you know, I've got to say, even before I moved into tech, I think the underlying kind of thing about modernizing skill sets and staying relevant as leaders and as organizations is to stay curious. And so while I might have worked in CPG and some of these companies, you know, which were great experiences, I've actually lived in 3 continents, you know, 6 or 7 countries. I think at last count, we've lived in 14 houses in the last 11 years. And it's that curiosity that I think was always kind of bred in me from an early stage. And I've been really fortunate to work at companies like Procter and Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, you know, GSK, well, Novartis, which is now GSK, that really focused on their high profile talent or high potential talent and allowed us to move around and do these great assignments. So, you know, I've worked in India, I've worked in Singapore, I've worked in Canada, in the US, I ran marketing for Europe. And so underneath all of that and through all those experiences, you get just a lot of kind of appreciation for different ways of thinking and different approaches. And you start to realize that what you thought you knew growing up in a small blue collar town in Canada, for me, your experiences open up and your aperture opens. And if you appreciate that, I think that skill then applies to the rest of your life. And so that's what's happened in marketing for me. I mean, I came out of school, chose Procter & Gamble, the Academy company. I mean, at that time, that's the place, right? If you get into P&G out of school back in the day, you made it. And that was like a goal. And then from there, I kind of grew my career in a pretty typical way. Eventually, I actually ended up going to Johnson & Johnson and became the global president of our marketing services organization, which is where I started to go really deep into technology. It was right around the time that the industry's tech consolidation had started, right? Companies started buying each other. All the big companies needed, tagging solutions and technology solutions and automation solutions. It was the time when sites were going from sort of brochures to active sort of direct marketing capabilities. And so we were literally building all that up. We had a digital center in New York. We had converted our insights organization into a data science organization. So for the first time, we were hiring as scientists and engineers in the data organization. And so that was sort of the beginnings, right? At scale, at a company like J&J, where I was doing that globally at scale, that's where you started to go deep. And then I really I fell in love with it. And I was like, let's go and apply this into a business that can really make a difference in the world. I've always been guided by purpose. And I moved over to Silicon Valley and became the global CMO and chief revenue officer of Ancestry.com. And, obviously a direct business, fully DTC, massive performance marketing engine, but also the full funnel right from the top to the bottom. Implemented actually with Salesforce, a whole new technology stack to activate our performance marketing and our CRM engine, as well as our commerce cloud. So we did that together. And really, I think the highlight of that was bringing consumer genomics into the mainstream, right? Like the ultimate marketing challenge of how do you use all this modern technology to ultimately create behavior change, which is convincing people to spit in a tube, put it in a FedEx box, and send it to someone to sequence their DNA. You can imagine that's quite a behavior shift to make. Totally. And it requires the full stack of marketing all the way from the top of the funnel down to hardcore direct performance and site analytics.
I was going to say, you can't shift behavior with just performance marketing. I'm sure there was a lot at the top there that you were thinking through. How do you educate and how do you get people comfortable with this new behavior?
Absolutely. And that's where content matters at all parts of the funnel, right? And that's why I like that business, because it brings the whole funnel together. I think there is a little bit of I'll call it a kind of a East Coast, West Coast thing going on in marketing right now, where it's like performance marketing versus brand marketing. I just don't understand that. It's all has to come together, and we have more tools than ever at our disposal. I mean, it's the new golden age of marketing. And
I've honestly never heard the East Coast, West Coast of marketing. I'm going to use that.
It's like TV and marketing going on here.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And you hear all these debates, and these are debates I don't understand, because ultimately the marketers that are going to win and the companies that are going to win are the ones that understand how to, change customer experience and behavior, leveraging the full suite of activity available to us. So like you said, you can't change behavior and build brands solely through performance marketing. It's a great early customer acquisition vehicle, but at some point you got to scale that. And on the flip side, you can't win a direct-to-consumer business without great direct marketing capabilities, attribution capabilities, site analytics, all those capabilities. And you've got to bring it together, and that's what Ancestry did. So amazing experience. Brought Ancestry into a modern light, made genomics a really big thing, along with the amazing team I had. And it was a great experience. So that was my first Silicon Valley experience.
So you mentioned to me in a previous conversation that you were reporting back to. Oh, wait, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was hearing a bit of feedback. You mentioned to me that you were constantly reporting to the board, like every month, or what was it, 2 weeks, or I can't remember, but it was like this whole, I think you called it the Inquisition. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
How was that experience? And was it super different from the pressures you had on you as a marketer before?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of us as CMOs are under constant pressure from our boards or CFOs to show return for every single dollar that we spend. It's just when you get to a direct business, right? Especially a privately funded direct business, every dollar goes under the microscope. And, it's largely because in direct businesses, you can attribute every dollar to a click, a visit, a conversion, all of those kinds of things. And so it's almost honestly, it's kind of, like I said, it's the golden age of marketing. And that comes with, careful what you ask for, right? Because as CMOs, we all want attribution. We all want to be able to measure everything. Well, when you can, then you have a kind of fiduciary duty to make sure you do it as well as you can. And so, were they challenging meetings and things like that? Of course, but I think.
Hello? Can you guys still hear me? Hey, can you guys see me? Great. Okay, cool. I guess we're waiting for Vineet. Hi.
We're all back together again.
Great. I don't know what happened there. I wanted to actually ask you a question because you mentioned the importance of bringing the performance and the upper funnel and, how content really sits across the board. And I was thinking as you were talking about that, how can you best prep as a young marketer for the variety of that skill set? Because I'm sure that even your marketing teams are still siloed into those functions, right? Like you have the performance marketing team, you have the demand gen team on the B2B side, you have brand marketing. How do you build your career so that you really learn around all these different skills that you need to have?
Yeah, look, it's career paths for marketers are totally different and should be totally different today than they might have been back in the day. If I go back to the beginning of my career, the way you build careers is you're on a small brand, then you're on a big brand, and the dollars get bigger. And what you start to realize is size of the business doesn't really matter anymore from a complexity standpoint, because complexity is actually driven by your business model more than anything. And so I think the main thing the only way to build your career nowadays, and I encourage our people to do this as well, is do a stint across all the core funnels of marketing. So lead a marketing technology implementation assignment. Get into a sort of analytics role where you're doing the attribution and measurement. Get into a brand and creative role where you're literally kind of defining brand positioning, which is sort of the more traditional skill sets. But then beyond that, get into things like performance marketing as well as sort of more mid-funnel media. There's no other way to say that than to say I think careers now are built horizontally. And it's through horizontal that you actually drive vertical accession in your career now. Because at my level and other CMOs levels, you have to be able to work the whole stack. And if you can't do that anymore, you're going to get, I'm telling you, irrelevant really quick. And the job of modern CMOs is changing dramatically. So horizontal career paths is the way to go. Ask for adjacent assignments, stretch yourself. And don't be in a rush. I mean, look, I shouldn't say this, but I'm in my low 40s. It's if you don't chase something and you more instead build your career in a horizontal way. I've taken 2 demotions in my life. Eventually, those skills accelerate you at some point. So I always say to people, bloom where you're planted, and pick lots of different pots to bloom in, and you'll be sort of be okay.
Wait, Vineet, you took 2 demotions because you felt like you needed to learn skills that were important for your overall career to be accelerated post those demotions, right?
Absolutely. It's playing the long game. Yeah. It's and you don't know how that's going to work out, right? There's a little, but if you're really fueled by curiosity and learning, you're going to be okay. If you're fueled by sort of
promotions,
upward trajectory and money,
you're
going to be in trouble. And so, chase learnings, chase experiences. And if that means a demotion, accept that. That means you're going to pay that out later, just because you have experiences that others don't later on in your career.
For sure. So I think that's a really good segue into this idea of like the modern CMO and what skills does the modern CMO need to have. And you give a presentation called the 5 Mantras of the Modern CMO. And in it, you quote a few different stats that I thought were really interesting and kind of scary, but I thought I should share them and then you can give some context around them. First stat, 30% of CMOs won't have jobs in 12 months. So, I mean, I think by now we all know CMOs change jobs very quickly, but 30% is a really high percentage. And then you also quoted, there were a few companies or logos in there, Coca-Cola, Taco Bell, Lyft, Hyatt, and a few others who just gave up the CMO title and the CMO role. So I'm curious, can you help us understand a little, what's your perspective on that? Why did they give up that CMO role? What are they replacing it with? And also, if you're a young marketer today, what are the things you could be learning and doing to really kind of grow into a strategic role?
Well, I think part of it is there's actually a quote from a writer in Ad Age in kind of mid 2019, which is, I think, underpinning all of this. He says that it's almost as if the word marketing itself needs a marketing campaign. Because it no longer encompasses all that goes into building brands and growing revenue, right? That's sort of where, and I fully agree with that. I think for 50 years, marketing was the same. Like, honestly, it didn't really change. It was sort of build brands, build relevancy, brand equity, to some degree purpose, and your brand will grow. There were high barriers to entry. You needed a lot of dollars to enter any major categories. And so
this was the Mad Men era, right?
Yeah, the game was, create moats through brand building and media dollars, get reach and frequency. I hardly look at reach and frequency personally anymore. And that's how you sort of build brands. And then all of a sudden, over the last kind of 5 to 10 years, with all of the technology, I mean, I spend more time with my CIO than I do with my, agency now. I spend more time with my technology partners. I mean, by magnitudes of 5x, I spend more time with my technology partners than I do with my creative agencies now. Mm-hmm. And, that if you told me 10 years ago that was going to be the case, today, I would have said you're crazy. So I think what's happening is that as the definition of marketing and all that encompasses is changing, I think a couple of things are happening. One, you're getting a new generation of C-suite in, right? As CEOs, as CFOs, and they've grown up in this changing definition. And so what's happening is you have multiple definitions of what a CMO is supposed to do. And that's creating sort of confusion and sort of expectations that can sometimes be misaligned between the CMO and the board, right? And that can sometimes be a conflict. The second thing is that quite simply, I think our industry doesn't help itself at times because, we talk all the time about brand equity and, all these other things which are important. Don't get me wrong, but the metric needs to be growth. It has to be, are we growing our businesses? And we have to be every day, come to the office, work with our CFOs, show our boards how every dollar we spend grows the business. And that's where technology is so important. And if you embrace that, you're able to kind of be a very different kind of CMO and start to get those expectations met again. So it's a very volatile time to be a CMO because of these changing definitions and expectations, new skill sets that are required, but there really is no choice. We have to be curious, we have to learn, or I worry that the role of the CMO, which frankly may not be the right title for the job anymore, if I'm very honest, right? Because I think it has old connotations. The role of kind of someone who looks after the customer in the C-suite, it has to be critical. It just has to be redefined. And I think that's what's happening in the industry right now.
Do you think that some of the brand equity focus and sole focus on brand equity comes from the fact that there's still, I don't want to say an older generation, but I kind of want to say an older generation of CMOs that are still kind of trying to transition and learn? And do you think this is going to kind of naturally, automatically get solved in 10 to 15 years when a new generation comes on?
Well, look, I just think brand equity, we just need much more balanced scorecards now, right? I think brand equity, the fundamentals of marketing will never go away. I mean, look, I grew up at P&G. That's my training at the core of my kind of career. And I'll never forget that. Brand equity, differentiation. Does your brand stand for something? Does it have a higher order purpose? Especially in today's society, purpose and brands are absolutely intangible.
Totally.
The thing that I think matters is that I think as technology gets to the center of a CMO's role, as opposed to the periphery of a CMO's role, I think it'll automatically start to happen. It's not going to be 10 to 15 years from now. I mean, in Silicon Valley, that's now, right? I mean, that is what the job of a CMO is. I've talked to board members in my past who you talk brand equity and they're just they talk to me about conversions and clicks. And I also think that's a mistake, by the way, right?
Totally.
So the answer is somewhere in the middle, right? Are you building a great differentiated brand, which is more than communications now, right? It's the full set of experiences around your brand. But then at the same time, is every dollar you're spending attributable to growth? And, I think, like I said, this is the real golden age of marketing, right? We're here right now. And if I'm very honest, there's this famous saying that half of the advertising, one half of my advertising dollars are wasted. I don't know which one. It's a famous saying for all of our marketers. And I think we all try to get everyone the right message at the right time. I mean, that's been an adage for years. The truth is, if we're honest, I think for many years, we were getting the average message to the average consumer at the average time. We did the best we could, but that's what our capabilities allowed us to do.
Right.
I think now we can do this with precision. And that's the expectation of us as CMOs. And we now need balanced scorecards that pull all of these metrics together into one place. And I think that's how the C-suite and the CMO, or whatever you call it nowadays, gain relevance back in the C-suite and with boards. I think that's something the industry as a whole has got to focus on right now.
So there's a question in the chat from Emily. Do you see the trend of companies reorganizing under a chief revenue officer or something of the kind, as something that is inclusive of marketing and sales and customer experience? Do you think we're just going to remove the title and just call it something else? Or do you think the chief marketing officer title is going to come to mean growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be marketing, because the word has been around for so long. I hope that what we do is, just reinvent the word marketing, right? But in the meantime, as all of this lands, you can call it whatever you want. There's chief growth officers. My good friend Allison Lewis is now the chief growth officer of Kimberly-Clark, bringing sales and marketing together. In other worlds, you call it the chief revenue officer and direct to consumer, because marketing is literally the source of acquisition, right? And you're doing cost per acquisition type analysis. And then in other businesses, it's more the chief customer officer, and you start to bring all the experience functions together. So I think I don't know what the trend is going to end up being for the title at the end of the day. There might be different solutions, but I think what's clear is integration of functions that meet that business model. It can no longer be marketing in a silo. I think you've got to bring customer experience functions together, marketing technology and sort of brand functions together. And then I think in CPG, you're going to have to bring sales and marketing functions together, because it's all about the experience, and you can't separate those things in silos anymore, or you can't move quick enough and make the decisions you need. So that's definitely a trend. Where the title ends up, I don't know. I mean, let's see. There's probably one right answer to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would love for the audience to just hear what the 5 mantras are, if you can share those with us. And then I want to jump into a little bit around how you cultivate talent on your team. But first, let's go through the 5 mantras.
Yeah, so I'll be super quick about this. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but the 5 mantras that we talk about in the organization are, first, unifying the CMO's job, or whatever you call it nowadays, is to unify the C-suite behind the customer. No matter what title you put on it, the job is to unify the C-suite around the customer. And I'll tell you, many of your watchers here might be in companies that have chief legal officers, chief privacy officers, chief data officers, chief digital officers. I mean, I go on and on. There's 20, 30 chiefs in large companies.
Yep.
But if you can find a niche as a CMO to really be the voice of the customer at that table, right? And all this talk about tech and all of that, that's fine, but ultimately is to serve the customer with your brand or your product or your experience.
Yep.
That's job one, is just be a relentless voice of the customer in the C-suite. That's the first mantra, and that's how you stay relevant. The second one is marketing is a growth function. It's not a communications function. It's not a brand function. It's not just a performance marketing function. It's a growth function. And so we talk a lot about the second mantra as being your company's growth hacker. Uncover new business models. If you're a one and done business, can you create a recurring revenue model? If you're a kind of a product business, can you become a marketplace business? So how do you bring growth hack sort of models into the business on a constant basis, constantly testing and learning them before you scale? I think that's the second place, is like, be a growth hacker. The third one is really around, you still have to be I always sometimes say a chief CMO could also mean chief meaning officer, right? You have to bring meaning to your company. And so, but it can't be meaning in absence of commerce. So what we call it is connect purpose and commerce. And so if you have a purpose that your company stands for, make sure it's deeply connected to the work your company does from a commercial standpoint. And I think that's how, first, your brand builds authenticity, but second, your company also understands its meaning coming to life through its core business, right? Working in the periphery on purpose, separate from commerce, does not work. And so we talk about connecting purpose and commerce.
And I think this is also about connecting the upper funnel with the mid funnel and the bottom funnel, right?
Pulling that all together. And the fourth piece is around make everything personal. And I don't mean that in sort of a cheesy way. That is hardcore data, technology, automation. Become a master of first party, second party, third party data. Understand how all of that comes together and sort of ramps into all of your media choices, all of your experiences. I read a study the other day that 72% of consumers will only engage with brands where it feels like the content or whatever you're offering them was made for them. And I think this really, personalization is how you drive relevance as a CMO today. And if you don't have the first party kind of the data chops, the technology and automation chops, and the brand chops all pulled together, you're in a lot of trouble as a CMO, and you won't be able to live into that fourth mantra, which is make everything personal. That's what customers expect. And then the last one is this idea, and it sounds like we'll go deeper, around cultivating unicorns. There's a major talent gap in our industry right now. I mean, when I was in the Valley, there was a lot of talk about software engineering talent and how that was at a dearth, and it still is. But if you look at a lot of studies nowadays, one of the biggest dearth of sort of capability from a supply demand standpoint is digitally native marketers, people that have worked in digital native companies that are digitally first. And it's a major gap. And so I think there's just, even if I wanted to hire every unicorn in the market, there's just not enough to feed the demand. And so we have no choice on this fifth mantra, but to cultivate unicorns ourselves is what we call it. And unicorns are data, tech, and creative, right? People that bring all of that together.
I like that.
Horizontal career paths. And we have to build those folks internally because there just isn't enough supply in the industry.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know we have a couple of minutes, and I hope you won't hate me, but I really want to ask you a tough question.
Bring it on.
You talked about the importance of first-party data. I know that you guys at Walgreens Boots, you're sitting on top of a ton of data, and I'm sure a lot of marketers are jealous in many ways. There's a lot of conversation around what is the dependency that marketers should have on the big social media platforms. There's obviously a boycott that's forming around Facebook, and there's just a bigger conversation that's happened over the last few years. Like, what's the trade-off, right, between borrowing your audience and buying your audience and going direct and building an audience you own? Where do you stand on that? And what's your advice to marketers on that front?
Look, I mean, I'll give you a point of view that I have, but then also, honestly, it's going to sound like a cop-out answer, but it's genuinely not meant to be. The first one is sort of any marketer any CMO that right now, today, for their business is not building a first-party data set is making a massive mistake, right? Data sharing is going away. Cookies are going away. Right? As long as all that stuff is happening and you don't have first-party data, your ability to do modern marketing, personalized marketing, all the things that customers are going to expect for a brand to be relevant, which ultimately has not changed in 50 years. CMO's job is still to keep brands relevant. Just the way you do that has changed. If marketers and CMOs are not focused on first-party information about their customers, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So my first answer is first-party data is the priority. How do you, in some ways, build your own walled garden, right, around your first-party data and be able to manage that? The second thing I'd say, though, is that, and the reason that's so important is you'll never get, the platforms are still going to be critical, right? The reach, Facebook has, 2 or 3 billion users. They work across the world. The reach that some of these platforms have is absolutely critical. But if you get solely reliant on the platforms to drive your sort of data connections, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So my point of view is it's going to take a village to activate a modern marketing sort of mindset. We're going to need all players, platforms, media companies, but we as CMOs and our companies are going to be left hanging if we do not first build our first party data sets so that we have the majority of the kind of say on who we connect with, how we connect with them, and how we match that into the media and platform ecosystem, right? That's got to be a big priority for all of us as CMOs.
You've just spoken my gospel. It's so important for CMOs to just get educated about what it means to collect first-party data, but also own first-party data and then utilize it. Because ultimately, there's no point in collecting it if you don't know how to pipe it back into the personalization funnels.
That's right. That's the secret sauce for the data is a marketer's oil now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vineet. This was such a great conversation. We're getting a ton of love in the chat. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. And thank you.
Thank you so much. So great to see you. And thanks for having me today.
Good to see you too. Bye.
Okay.